Congressman LaCharette, thanks for joining us this week.
Sure.
Let's jump right into it. So this was a busy week here in D.C., and busy not because of something that was happening in Congress, but because of some executive action that was taken by the EPA in terms of greenhouse gas emissions. Talk to us a little bit about what happened.
Well, in a highly anticipated set of regulations, the EPA, sort of consistently with what the President said he was going to do, and that is if the Congress wasn't going to act, I'm going to do things on my own, issued a set of regulations that call for a 30% reduction in emissions by existing power plants by the year 2030. And it sparked a lot of debate. I mean, some people like it, and some people clearly do not. The difficulty for the President and some members of his party who are running for election in places like Kentucky and West Virginia and so forth and so on, it kind of puts them on the hot seat. And you've actually seen, you know, a couple of Nick Rahal, who's a congressman from West Virginia, distance himself, and Secretary of State Grimes, who's running against Mitch McConnell, has done the same thing.
Yeah, I was just going to mention, I think one of the most interesting developments about that was the reaction of some of the red state Democrats, particularly the coal state Democrats. You mentioned Secretary of State Grimes in Kentucky, the Democratic nominee, Secretary of State Tennant in West Virginia, as well as Mary Landrieu. It was a kind of an interesting opening for the president to get criticism from this many Democrats on the issue.
Yeah, I think that's right. And in addition, I heard on the radio the other day the governor of West Virginia, who's a Democrat as well, basically saying that these regulations would shut down every electric power plant in the state, which he's not obviously in favor of. But it's something that, you know, has passionate people on both sides of the issue, and I think a lot is yet to happen.
Well, there actually was something going on in Congress this week, and the appropriations process, as it continues forward. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, you know, we've talked a number of times about regular order returning to Capitol Hill.
It's like the new catchphrase, by the way, regular order.
And part of regular order is the appropriations process. And so you saw in really a throwback to the old days, at least in the House, you had something known as the Commerce Justice State Appropriations Bill on the floor with amendments, and they actually voted it off, and now we'll send it into conference with the Senate. It's the second or third bill that they've actually had the opportunity to get through, and then over in the Senate, they've moved forward at a full committee markup on the transportation bill, which the House has already cleared. And so you do have in the queue the opportunity to have some spending bills done the right way sometime over the course of the summer. And even if they can't hammer out individual bills, you at least have each house's mark on what they would like to see in a big spending wrap-up bill at the end of the year.
And I was about to say, for all the talk of kind of the return to regular order in the appropriations process, there's beginning to be some rumblings that we're running out of time to see all of these appropriations bills through, and that we're starting to hear talk about an omnibus or a minibus. And you know, do you think at the end of the day that that's where we're heading?
I think some bills, like the defense bill and some other ones that are sort of must-do, have a good chance of being passed by themselves. The other 8, 9, 10 will probably wind up in an omnibus at the end of the year. Because if you take the month of May, for instance, in terms of days in session, that the House of Representatives was in session, it was 12. You know, so you have Memorial Day, you have other stuff in there. And that really isn't enough time when you think about it's going to be similar in June, similar in July. They're not going to be here in August. And then you have Labor Day, and really the campaigns are in full swing. And so you're really going to have precious few days for everybody to be in the same place at the same time to get these things done. So you're probably looking at an omnibus at the end of the fiscal year. Well,
we would be remiss not to talk about the issue that has probably most dominated D.C. This week, and in fact all across the country, the issue of the president authorizing the swap of the 5 Taliban folks from Guantanamo Bay in exchange for an American POW who'd been held by the Taliban for 5 years. A lot of questions about whether or not Bergdahl, the American POW who was returned, was actually guilty of deserting his post. And it has really been amazing to watch. You think a POW returns, it's going to be this huge, warm, great story, and it's really blown up on the administration. Talk to us a little bit about this.
Well, this story, the Bergdahl prisoner swap, has sucked all the oxygen really out of D.C. this week, and probably the happiest people are the ones down at the Veterans Administration because it's knocked the VA difficulties and Secretary Shinzeki's resignation right off the front pages of the newspaper. And when the deal was announced on Saturday, I was actually in the CNN studios waiting to talk on another matter and got bumped by what I thought was great news. I mean, so you have the one American service member who's held as a prisoner in the Middle East or in Afghanistan is going to be returned, and it was one of those feel-good stories, I think. But as more and more develop, you find out that members of his unit were ordered not to discuss this as long as he was in captivity. Now they can talk, and you're getting a lot of blowback. You're getting the Taliban doing victory laps, saying this is a huge victory for the Taliban, and there are a lot of questions. And you have some families who their sons were lost searching for this fellow, and so this has some. This is going to have some play for a number of weeks, and a lot of critics of the deal are coming out. I saw Senator Harry Reid defended the deal today and lashed out at Republicans, but even the most strident defenders of this deal, I think, are going to have some difficulties. And you saw it in the president's language. It was interesting that words to the effect that regardless of what the circumstances turn out to be, this was a good deal.
Right.
And so that, to me, in political speak, that is, he's not expecting the circumstances when all the facts are known to actually be so good.
Are you surprised that the White House, I've read some things recently saying that they expected that this was going to be a good story, that this was going to be one that was going to kind of bring the country together. Are you surprised at how poorly planned and how poorly managed this was? I mean, within 24 hours, CNN had the wife of a soldier who was killed, purportedly trying to rescue him on air, talking about how this guy's no hero. I mean, are you surprised at the handling of this by the White House?
I don't know about the White House, but somebody gave the president really bad advice, and the president has to sign off on this at the end of the day, and so he's ultimately responsible. But I don't think the president got the whole blow by blow going back 5 years and here's this, that, and the other thing, and I suspect somebody pitched it to him as a feel-good story. Hey,
right.
Here's a great story where we can get the one man left behind and keep our pledge that we don't leave anybody behind. And who wouldn't want to sign up for that unless you know all the other facts and whether his. I don't think the president was well served in making this decision, and those who sort of urged the decision be made, I don't think really did their homework.
Well, I wanted to close by talking about primary season. We're kind of getting towards the end of the primary season. We had quite a few primaries this week. Kind of give us a quick, kind of breakdown of the important races and what happened.
Well, the one I really want to talk about is the Mississippi Republican Senate primary, and so that had six-term Senator Thad Cochran, who's been around for a very long time and really a gentleman and a statesman, against a state senator by the name of Chris McDaniel. And everybody expected it to be close, and it not only was, it was a virtual dead heat, and as a result, in 3 weeks, those two gentlemen are going to face off in a runoff election to determine who the Republican nominee is. And basically in Mississippi, whoever the Republican, let me take that back. If Senator Cochran is the Republican nominee, I think he's in good shape. If it's State Senator McDaniel, you have a former member of the House, Travis Childers, who was the Democrat who won the primary, that'll be on the ballot. The concern about this particular primary at this moment in time is that all the signs are pointing to a real good chance that the Republican Party will pick up enough seats to take functional control of the United States Senate on next year. There are those who worry because nobody ever sort of counted, Mississippi being a problem. They were talking about pickups in West Virginia and Montana and South Dakota and other places. There are a number of people in the Republican hierarchy that are concerned that if McDaniel beats Thad Cochran, that then puts the Mississippi Senate seat in play, which nobody ever anticipated, which may throw the whole majority strategy into a cocked hat. So that's probably the biggest storyline here this week.
Well, and I saw that they were talking this week, Democrats, since the election, have been saying, pushing out poll results from the Childers campaign, the Democratic nominee, saying that if it's McDaniel, that it's essentially a dead heat. If it's Thad Cochran, that it's essentially a futile race, which I thought was interesting for them to kind of be leaking this out now. It seems like they're banking on McDaniel or bust.
Yeah, I think that's right. And it's interesting that Travis Childers is a Democrat. He had been a Democrat, then he became a Republican after he was in the House, and now he's apparently back to being a Democrat. And so clearly not the purest Democratic standard bearer in Mississippi. But it does throw the thing into a cocked hat potentially.
Well, it will be something for us to look at and talk about more in the weeks ahead.
We'll do it.
Congressman Lasseret, once again, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.